Mr. Chair, you're alive. Mr. Chair, you are muted.
Was just as well. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, November 4th, 7 p.m. Planning Commission meeting for 2021. My name is Ben Sale. I'm the chairman. I'm now calling this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Sale,
Here.
Mr. Waldman,
Here.
Mr. Klein,
Present.
Mr. Imes,
Here.
Ms. Butler, not here. All right, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Ms. Butler had emailed that she has too many other meetings to attend, so she cannot attend the Planning Commission meeting. So she said she would watch it on YouTube, which brings to mind, and we need some legal advice here and leadership from other members of the commission. If you can't make a meeting and you want to watch it on YouTube and you hear the whole meeting, yet you were not a participant at the meeting, should you be able to vote at that next meeting on the item if you participate in that next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, Joe Albright with Office of Law. I think Chris Baird in concurrence.
You're good to go.
Okay, and my only point of that was if the public doesn't have a chance to ask back a question of the commissioner at that first meeting, I guess they have the chance at the second meeting to do so, to be fair. So I think it's good, but that question was posed by someone else to me via email. So, okay, we've got legal leadership there telling us that's okay. So we, in effect, as long as she watches the YouTube video, we'll have all of the members present for that next meeting to hear the item and then vote on it. All right, going on to the approval of minutes and the agenda. Let's start with the agenda. As the agenda as we see it, is there any problems with that, or should we continue with it as is? I move that we approve the agenda as is.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. We'll keep the agenda as written, nothing to add to it. And of course, there's always unfinished business and adjournment. There's always usually a miscellaneous section in there. Sometimes it pops up. But, okay, moving on to the approval of minutes. I'll stop the share of this and then go to our minutes. And Diane had recommended a change, so we'll bring up hers. A very slight textual change for comments with regards to traffic on the second page. And Mr. Waldman, I saw that you had no issue with the document as written via email. Thank you.
Very good job, Ms. Consoli.
And this is Diane's copy. So take it with a grain of salt there of change.
Are you sharing something? Because I don't see anything, but
Not yet. I'm trying to get to where she would have made changes in red, but I don't see any changes at all. So I don't see any. Yeah, I'm not seeing. She supplied back a document, but I don't see any changes in that document from the original. Were all the rest of you able to see her comment basically via
Yes.
email?
Yes.
Not
yes.
100% sure of what she really wants to change, other than the fact that let me review her email one more time real quickly here to make sure.
Mr. Chairman, on the fourth page, the first paragraph, she adds one sentence that says, other commissioners voice their concerns regarding traffic issues as well. And this is with regard to the Primrose project.
Staffing issues or traffic issues?
Traffic.
Traffic issues.
I'll move to approve those minutes with that addition.
I'll
Okay,
second.
any further discussion? That's it. That's fair. It's a very easy change. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the minutes passed. Thank you very much, Mr. Consoli. Appreciate that. Now I'll move on to the findings. Here's our opinion and order. And for any of those who cannot see the screen here, it's opinion and order for the major site design by the city to demolish the existing Hillman garage and build a new garage at the same location. 592 parking spaces, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Waldman had no issues with it. I had no issues. Is there anything anyone else would like to add to the opinion and order?
Can you go down to the conditions?
Start here. The agency review. Standard, these are standard, so we'll get through this. And here's the number 13, lucky number 13 is the one we were debating over quite some bit.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense when you say public restrooms and then you say a minimum of one. That makes no sense. Because that's saying it's plural, but then it says a minimum of one. So I don't understand that at all. It
Well,
should say
I
at
mean,
least one public restroom. is
at
what-
least one, but maybe two.
Yeah, but
I'm okay. I don't see a problem with that.
no, but if you say at least one, that's not public restrooms, that's public restroom. So you might as well just say at least one public restroom, preferably two or something, but to say public restrooms and then just say at least one makes no sense to me.
It's almost like it's a bulleted item and then
You know,
after.
I like Mr. Iam's language. At least one public restroom, comma, preferably more than one, comma, shall be provided by the applicant.
Yeah.
So at least one public restroom, comma, preferably more than one, comma, shall be provided. Makes it a little more emphatic.
Mhm. I mean, no matter what, we're just gonna get one, so what's the,
You never know. You never know.
I mean, that's basically what the developer said.
All right. I move to approve those findings with that amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, and to be clear for the notes taking at hand, could you restate that, the sentence?
At least one public restroom, comma, preferably more than one, comma, shall be provided, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that just shows our intent.
Any further discussion on the item, including legal?
I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The findings will have item number 13 amended as such.
If I have your approval with that one change verbatim, I'll go ahead and send it out.
Please do and sign. Okay, now we can move on to the public hearings part of our day here. We have one item to be heard, the major site design plan review application. I'll go ahead and share that for the members of the public here. Actually, no, that's the minutes there. Okay, for the major site design plan review application by the City of Annapolis property developer for the redevelopment of Port Williams Marina into the Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating Center, also known as CRAB, on property located at 7040 Bemby Beach Road. And the public hearing on this item will be open until November 18th. And we do have one person that applied to testify tonight. So if we could get the presentation by staff, then the city, and then we'll go right into the public participant, which is an adjoining property owner, to give their opinion on that as well tonight before we really start talking about it too much as a commission. I'd like to get that person's opinion out before we go too far in depth with asking too many questions, if that's okay with everyone else. But I know we will get bogged down at some point. All right, so over to the city and staff to present the case.
Good evening. I'm Cynthia Godinez. I'm with the current planning division of the Department of Planning and Zoning. As you've mentioned, this is a major site design plan review project, SDP 2021-002, for the redevelopment of Port Williams Marina located at 7040 Bemby Beach Road. The property zone WMI, which is a waterfront maritime industrial district. It is also within the critical area and has the 100-foot buffer. The proposed use is the Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating Center. The property is owned by the City of Annapolis and then is leased to CRAB for this project. The application was received in April of 2021. The plans and supporting documents have been reviewed by various city departments and critical area commission staff. Based on agency reviews and meetings with city staff, the plans were revised a number of times up to the point as to what is being shown to you tonight and that you've received in your packages. The proposed project requires consistency with the city's comprehensive plan, determination that the project is consistent with the city's critical area program by both Department of Planning and Zoning and the Critical Area Commission, and it requires review and approval for the major site design plan review per code section 2122. The applicant has provided the required notification. An advertisement was placed in the Capital newspaper. The property was posted with the public hearing sign, and notice the hearing was sent by mail to surrounding property owners and tenants within 400 feet of the subject property. Affidavits of mailing and posting have been received from the applicant. As you noted, there was one public comment from an adjacent property owner that was received. That information was provided to you, and they did ask to deliver live testimony at tonight's hearing. Based on the plans and supporting documents provided by the applicant and reviewed by such city agencies, the staff has determined that the applicants have adequately met the site design plan review criteria, and we do recommend approval of the application subject to the conditions noted in the staff report. However, there is one correction that needs to be made to one of the conditions of that staff report conditions list. I don't know if you want me to note that now or not, or you want to get to that later on.
I'd like to hear what it is, if that's okay.
Okay, so Number 11 states that the applicant shall grade the frontage of their parcel to receive a 5-foot sidewalk, curb and gutter along Bemby Beach roadway. A fee in lieu of construction of the sidewalk is required. The engineer of record shall provide a cost estimate to be reviewed and approved by the city of Annapolis prior to submission of grading permit. Stormwater management mitigation for this project shall include the impervious area of the future sidewalk. No planting shall encroach within the footprint of the 5-foot sidewalk. However, based on an email that I received from Dr. Nash yesterday before she left, and her conversation with the city manager, we are not going to be requiring that the area be graded for the sidewalk. The fee in lieu still will remain, but they don't have to do the grading for the sidewalk, as the sidewalk may end up being on the other side of the street. But the fee, they still do need to pay a fee in lieu of providing a sidewalk.
Well, the fee in lieu, would that equal the amount, the cost to put it on the other side?
That would be that's my understanding, yes. And that fee would be determined by the Department of Public Works.
Okay, so that,
Also, is the grading take place in the public right of way, or is that private property?
Well, it's not going to, it won't take place at all for the sidewalk on their side of the street because they're not going to provide one.
All right, so let me just ask, if there were to be one on their side of the street, is that public right of way, or is that on their property?
It would be public right of way, is my understanding.
Okay,
But that's not going to be a requirement at this time.
yeah, I understood. I just,
Right.
given that the where a sidewalk might end up is still up for debate. I just want to make sure that we don't lose an opportunity to be able to do it here if it happens to be on the side. But if it's on the public right of way, then it's a non-issue.
Yeah, their parking lot goes up to almost the edge of their property, so it's definitely in the
Okay.
public. Would be in the
Okay.
public right.
so actually what the condition should read is something to like, the applicant shall provide a fee in lieu for construction of a sidewalk on the other side of Bemby Beach Road.
Well, that's been the discussion, but yes, they need to provide a fee so that the Department of Public Works has received that fee to be able to provide the sidewalk when that project is determined and where that project is determined, as far as
Okay.
providing a sidewalk along Bemby Beach.
Okay, so let me just see if I get it, if it's simple, let me say it again. The applicant shall provide a fee in lieu of for construction of a sidewalk on the other side of Bemby Beach Road, comma, to be constructed by the Annapolis Department of Public Works? Is that saying what?
I don't have that in any particular, there's nothing in writing or in ink saying when that would be done or where exactly it would be located. But Department of Public Works and the city manager decided that for this project and on this side of the road, they weren't going to require that they install the sidewalk or do grading for a sidewalk on that side.
Okay,
That's all I can tell you as far as I can't tell you what totally is going to be determined in the future for where the sidewalk is going. Or, yes, if it's not going to be on this side, then yes, logically it would have to be on the other side. But
okay.
I don't have anything, in writing stating that.
Okay, I presume that Public Works will come up with a cost that's sort of independent of location side of the street. They have some standard formula for what, how many feet of a 5-foot sidewalk costs.
There's a number of obstacles to providing the sidewalk on either side of the street,
Right.
is my understanding. But it was decided that in lieu of making the crab project do this, we would accept a fee in lieu to be able to use those funds in the future to provide the sidewalk and maybe a, capital improvements.
Yeah, and
Project.
I think given that the location of the sidewalk is TBD, I wouldn't want to specify. I think we'd not want to specify the side of the street that it would be on, that the fee in lieu is for, because we don't know. And don't
Yeah,
wanna
that's my
box it.
concern too. It's just that, at this point, they're not being required to provide a sidewalk on their side of the street.
Yeah.
And we just want to get a fee to be able to use in the future for a determination of a sidewalk down the road.
Can I make the suggestion, Ms. Godinez, that between now and the next hearing, that you come up with language which is acceptable to you and to the Department of Law and to the applicant? And we don't. do
I
the-
think we can keep it as simple as getting rid of, most of this condition with the, with the change of a fee in lieu of construction of a sidewalk is required. And, the engineer of record shall provide a cost estimate to be reviewed and approved by the city of Annapolis prior to submission of the grading permit.
I'm going to ask you to.
So
come
I
up-
think you can get rid of the first sentence and the last sentence, and it pretty much says what I believe it needs to say.
Okay. We leave it in your lap to come up with the language which is going to be acceptable by the next in 2 weeks, by the next hearing date?
Yeah, but you don't like what I just suggested, or?
No, it may be, but just when you get it down
Yeah,
in
that's
writing. for us
that's
to
fine.
see.
I will not be at the next hearing, but Mr. Smith will be there and he can do that.
Okay, and you can shepherd it through the Department of Law or whomever, okay?
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks. Because rather than us doing it on the fly here tonight.
And to be
That's-
clear,
yeah, that's-
you're getting rid of the fee in lieu is what you're saying, right?
No, they're
No.
keeping the fee in lieu, but they're just not specifying where the sidewalk should be. But the fee in lieu will be determined by the Department of Public Works and the location.
Right.
So we're not getting rid of the fee in lieu, but we're getting rid of specifying where the thing should be.
Correct.
And then, right, okay. I'm gonna leave it, let's leave it in your lap and then we'll take it up next time.
That's fine.
Thank you.
You're
And to be
welcome.
clear, this is a partnership of the city of Annapolis with CRAB developing this. So the city of Annapolis actually is the applicant.
We
with-
actually are the applicant as the property owner, correct?
To be clear, because we keep referring to it as the applicant, them, it's really us. So, all right.
Yeah, they're the lessee and when we lease property, they're responsible to take care of the applications.
So for members of the public, making it the quick and easy on it is, it's a leased property owned by the city. So
Right.
the leasee and the lessor are co-applicants in the case. Okay. Anything else from the city or questions from commissioners of the city?
How long is the lease for?
I don't know that answer. Mr. Bollinger may know the executive director of CRAB. I don't know that information.
Okay,
Lease is for 40 years.
okay.
And it's not an existing lease, it's going to start it in the future, or is that continuation of a 40-year lease?
The lease was signed a year ago.
Okay, so we're 1 year into, got it, okay. And for members of the public, what used to be on there, as you see on the map, of the old Port Williams Marina building right there. That's the site, right here, for public. Any other questions of staff? Well, let's roll right into the applicants giving the case then, or basically was that it? Do we have anybody else to present?
The applicant has a short presentation, is my understanding.
Okay. Well, let's move into that person, whoever that may be, and please, let's get who it is actually. The developer being hired by the applicant or what have you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul Bollinger. I need to share the screen to show a short 2-minute video.
Perfect.
And then we have one of CRAB's board members, Steve Ritterbush, who'll speak. Then I'll provide a project overview, and that will be followed by our engineer, Carl Kors, to address any specific engineering issues related to the project. And we also have Vernon Halstead on as our landscape architect here to talk about the extensive landscaping that's being required for this project.
All right, thank you. And how do you pronounce that, Bollinger? Is it Bollinger Shipyards or? is it
I
Bollinger?
wish. No, it's not, but we say Bollinger, but Bollinger, just call us. Just don't call us late for dinner or anything like that. So we'll be
Please
good.
proceed. It's all yours. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I just want to show you a
Mr. Malone?
video.
As you're sharing that, just make sure when you bring up the share screen, on the bottom left corner of that screen, there's a little thing to share audio as well. Just make sure you click that, otherwise we won't hear anything.
Okay. That's the bottom left screen.
So as you hit your share screen, a little box pops up, and the bottom corner of that little window, there's a little thing that says share computer audio as well.
Okay, let me do that before I get this going here. I see share screen and
So click that, and then from when that pops up in that little window.
share sound.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Thank you.
Should I optimize for video clip?
Nah, don't worry about it.
Okay. Appreciate your help. Okay, it's not playing nice here. Okay, I may not be doing a video. Okay, I'm not sure why this disappeared. It's worked all day.
Keep working it, and if you have to come back to it, you can come back to it. No problem. You know. If you fit it in.
Yeah, to be honest, it's not that important. I'll go off of sharing screen here.
You can punt to another person and then come back to yourself if you want, what have you. It's all yours.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and have Steve Ritterbush speak. So let me. Do I need to do anything to get the screen back so it's full screen?
I've got you, Mr. Bollinger. Of
Okay. Thank you.
course.
Good thing we have a hacker and Julian.
What will we do without Julian? I want to introduce Steve Ritterbush. He's a CRAB board member and has been a tremendous proponent of this project and is very, very knowledgeable about it because he's helped raise nearly $1.8 million that will be used to build this facility out as the premier adaptive boating center in the country. Steve?
Thanks, Bo. Can everyone hear me all right? I sometimes have trouble being heard using my laptop.
You're good.
You sound fine.
Am I all right? Can you hear all right?
We can hear you fine.
Great. All right. So I didn't expect to be the leadoff hitter, but in any event, I'd like to thank the commission for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Steve Ritterbush. You can't see me where I'm sitting, but I had the unfortunate accident about 6 years ago of taking a fall 18 feet onto my head, and I wound up being a quadriplegic in my wheelchair. Before that, I had been extremely active doing any number of things around town. I was raised in Annapolis. I grew up here, lived here all my life. You know, I played my last lacrosse game when I was 65. I hiked. I loved to sail. I grew up on the water. And after my accident, I was totally paralyzed. And it took me months of rehab just to be able to move again. And I had no outside activities. And fortunately, I ran into Bo Bollinger at a meeting, and he kept twisting my arm to come out to CRAB. CRAB has turned my life around, and I became so enthusiastic about it, I joined the board. And the more I got involved with CRAB, I saw the people that were coming out on the CRAB boats. We have a fleet of 6 boats that heretofore have been moored at Sandy Point. We do about 1,000 guests a year, and to see the joy on people's faces when they are able to get out and begin to at least do something that their disabilities have restricted them from doing. We not only take care of people with spinal cord injuries like myself, but we take care of wounded and recovering warriors, children from disadvantaged neighborhoods, children with all kinds of childhood diseases. And it's become a mission of mine to begin to build this, this center. I knew the Bembys growing up, so I knew the area very well down at the end of Bemby Beach Road. It's an ideal location for us. We've been working for at least 5 years trying to get this center built. And we now have gotten to the point where our piers are in. I went down, our floating piers are in, which will enable people in wheelchairs like myself to roll out onto a dock and to be lifted up with a hoist and lifted into our boats. But I can see the piers, but I can't get to them because of the grading issues. So I'm here tonight to ask the commission to see if we can indeed move this project along so that we are able to open the adaptive boating center in the spring, to begin to open it to people like myself and begin to enjoy being out on the bay again. We have the opportunity in Annapolis to essentially build what I consider to be the premier boating center for people with disabilities, not only on the Chesapeake Bay, but on the East Coast of the United States. There's nothing like this anywhere else. And I think it'd be a great mark of achievement for Annapolis to have something like this. So very quickly, I'd like to thank you for giving my time to speak. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Not hearing any question. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead. We'd like to get through most of your presentation, then we'll ask questions probably as a bunch after that.
Okay, excellent. Just a little history of this project. As Steve mentioned, it started approximately 5 years ago to research and find a facility for crab. We outgrew Sandy Point State Park, where we've been using a floating dock there with a use agreement from the state for the past 30 years. So we found this property. We met independently with the Williams family and reached a letter of interest signed with them to sell the property to Crab. We, in 2019, got the governor and the state legislature to give this project $1 million. We worked with the county of Anne Arundel and the city of Annapolis to use program open space money. And together they put up 1.8 million, 500,000 from the city, 1.3 from the county to acquire the property. The property was appraised out at 2.25 million. Crab used part of the $1 million we got from the state, which was non-matching. We could use for anything. And so we filled in the remaining amount needed to purchase the property, which was acquired by the city on October 29th of last year from the Williams. In that time frame, we've acted very, very expeditiously. We received a $250,000 waterway improvement grant from DNR, and we've also received a $75,000 bond bill last year for the ADA restrooms down near the water for our guests. What we're working to do, as Steve stated, the docks are almost completed now. They're beautiful state-of-the-art floating docks that were designed specifically for our boats, which are Beneteau First 22s, and the higher freeboard they have to allow our transfer boxes and slides to be able to be used to board guests who are not being boarded by Hoyer lifts. As he mentioned as well, there's an 80-foot T-head on this dock because we built it so we could accommodate OPBs, other people's boats. So if you had a family member or a friend that you wanted to board on your boat, but your boat's docked at a fixed dock, or you don't have the equipment to board that guest or family member, you would make a reservation at Crab and come, and we would have a trained volunteer use our equipment to board your guest or family member onto your boat to go out boating or sailing. So we are open to everyone aside from Crab's fleet and the operations and programs that we operate with up to 30 different nonprofits in the region that serve their clients, patients, or students. In addition, last week we received a $220,000 grant to acquire a fully adaptive pontoon boat that will allow guests in wheelchairs to roll onto the boat and be able to pilot the boat using a joystick, and also to go fishing. And we're mounting a Hoyer lift on this pontoon boat that will be able to take guests out of their chairs and place them on wakeboards and be able to go wakeboarding behind this pontoon boat. So we're really branching out to not just sail, it's power, and they could also earn their Maryland boating certification. We're going to acquire radio-controlled boats for guests who are unable to board and would like to learn how to sail in the water off of this dock, which is very good to do that because the channel is on the other side of Back Creek. We're facing more or less what is a sunken island there off the front of this marina. So it's going to be excellent protected water for that kind of activities. We're adding kayaks, paddle boards, everything else to accommodate guests with different disabilities, recovering warriors, and then, of course, children from underserved communities. So where we are right now is the property's been acquired. The Williams have moved away. We have, for the past year, had a 4,000 square foot commercial building sitting in the 100-foot critical area, and 20% of a home, 1,800 square foot, sitting in the critical area as well, the 100-foot critical area, that we wish to have demolished so that we could create more pervious surface between now and when we move ahead with the project. But we understand that without a building permit, we're not able to do that. With that said, this project is incorporating with the work with Planning and Zoning and the Critical Area Commission. The challenge we've had is the 2-to-1 ratio used in the critical area, the 100-foot critical area, of disturbed property, disturbed, because the parking lot is being shrunk from what it is right now, even though we're creating 7 handicap parking spaces in that parking lot for our guests. We're demolishing the 4,000 square foot building, we're demolishing the home, and we're building a 2,600 square foot state-of-the-art learning center completely outside of the 100-foot critical area, completely outside. It will be solar powered. We have an agreement with a company that will provide CRAB with free energy for the next 25 years. In addition, we'll have 3 EV charging stations in the parking lot. 9 to 10 of the spaces in the parking lot, to again, not create more pervious surface, will be pervious asphalt pavers so that they will be able to drain the water and keep it from sheeting down to what we are building are 2 exceptionally large stormwater retention areas that do not exist right now on the property, where the parking lot is sloped, and those will be able to catch the remaining water that's sheeting off. In addition, CRAB will, because of that 2-to-1 ratio, CRAB will be planting 600 trees, shrubs, bushes, and perennials on this 0.86 acres. But we're 4,400 square feet short based on that 2-to-1 ratio. And we have worked with the city to come up with a reasonable payment in lieu of planting. And we will do that in lieu of that additional planting, and those funds will go to the city. But I wanted to emphasize the extraordinary effort that CRAB is going to make this marina that has been a marina for 50 years into an exemplary piece of property that will be environmentally friendly and able to accommodate our guests who must have the highest ADA standards met not only on land, but on the dock as well. So that incorporates what we're doing from the big picture. I think I'd like to have Carl speak to any of the engineering issues that we have gone above and beyond to ensure that this property that currently is on septic tanks and well water, to tie it in and modernize the entire system on that property. Carl?
Well, my name is Carl Kors. I'm the engineer of record. I've been doing the design work on the site plans. If now is an appropriate time, I'd like to take a minute and share my screen and just show you the site plan. I know you all have it in front of you on paper, but this would be good for the public. So I will go ahead and do that. And what I'll do is I'll share actually the CAD screen so I can move around and show you what that's all about. So I'm sharing now. However, there we go. Can everyone see the site plan?
We can, and please keep in mind that our screens are somewhat minimized from what you
Yeah,
share.
I'm just gonna show you the whole, this is the site that Paul was talking about.
More than you would for your own screen.
Understood. This area out here
Oh, hang on.
is in Back Creek, and this is the floating dock system that Paul discussed. This was done under a separate permit with the Army Corps, MDE, and the port wardens. And as you can see, we have multiple lifts. We have several sections of, this used to be a 30+ berthing marina. Now it has many less berths, but it's sort of designed to accommodate boats coming in and out and the movement that's necessary to serve the crab clientele. As we go onto land, you'll see this is Benby Beach Road. This is going toward the end here on this side. There used to be 2 entrances here to the Port Williams that were very steep and difficult. We have eliminated the entrance at the south end and made one large commercial entrance here, where we will be creating a much more natural entrance into the property. Paul discussed the 2,600 square foot state-of-the-art learning center. This is the 100-foot critical buffer line you see that I'm trailing along here. So this is outside of the buffer. He also mentioned the pervious pavement parking area that is mostly outside of the buffer, but accommodates a drainage area that would normally sheet down into Benby Beach Road. We didn't want to create any more concerns with flooding or adjacent property impacts. And then we have 2 stormwater management facilities right down near the bulkhead here and here. And those will accept almost all of the runoff from the rest of the parking area. Besides that, there is a boathouse, what we're calling the boathouse. It's 3 bathrooms and a storage facility that will be elevated out of the floodplain. We have a pavilion on the west side for outdoor events, and then ADA parking and sidewalks and paths, allowing the clients to get to all the parts of the property. Finally, as we mentioned, as Paul also mentioned, if you imagine that same everything in the cyan blue is now proposed trees and shrubs. So they're sort of surrounding the property, and we're kind of placing them everywhere we can, around the back of the building, along the street. We have street trees along Benby Beach. And we've also taken great lengths to preserve some of the large trees that exist on the property now. You see these magenta colored maple. There's a big oak here. We're doing some extraordinary efforts to keep the impacts to their critical root zones at a minimum. We're keeping large trees along the front here. Also a tree right by the entrance to the dock area. So it's been that's been quite a challenge, and really sort of drove the site design to try to limit impacts on existing mature trees. We're tying into public utilities in 2 locations. You can see there's a manhole in Bemby Beach Road here, an existing one, and we're tying our sewer in there. There's a ton of utilities in Bemby Beach Road coming from across the creek, actually. So we're bringing water and sewer from the main facility through pipes here and here down to this area. And then we're also tying separately into the sewer and water for the boathouse and the dock area.
Could you slow down with the cursor movement? It's a little hard to follow you. You're going so fast.
Okay, sorry. I didn't want to make your eyes glaze over, so I was trying to move quickly. So 2 utility tie-ins, 1 major tie-in at the south end, and that would be the sewer lines here and water lines here. There's an existing hydrant here that we will be that will take care of fire protection in this area. And then as we move north, we have our tie-ins for sewer and water to the boathouse here in the middle of Bemby Beach Road at existing manholes. And that water will also be exiting the boathouse and heading out onto the pier to provide water out on the pier. So that's just a quick overview. This is the planting plan, as I mentioned before. You can see there are many shrubs and trees going in sort of around and everywhere we can squeeze them while still maintaining movement and some active recreation lawn areas for people to picnic and otherwise spend time on looking out onto Back Creek. So I will stop sharing my screen now, and we can finish up the presentation, and then I'll go back to it if anyone has any specific questions.
Does anybody have any questions as it relates to the landscaping?
I do, but do you have any more to brief on the landscaping, or is it just what we just had?
This is Vernon Husted. I think Carl did a pretty good job of what's on there. He did mention that really preserving the trees, we did make several changes to reduce the impacts to the critical root zones. We're also doing root pruning and fertilization to preserve the trees that are on there. Our focus has been on putting plants along Back Creek, along that shoreline, just to protect that as well. But with the planting, we pretty much put buffers all around, and like Carl has mentioned, we kind of used every little space we could to put the plants in there. But I'd welcome any questions you may have.
I have a question. It's been a little bit hard to follow the mitigation strategy. So are you going to pay some fee in lieu, or are you able to mitigate completely on site? That's not clear to me.
We will pay a fee in lieu for the remaining 4,400 square feet.
Okay.
Why is it that you're not using that lawn and doing something with that so that you don't have to pay a fee in lieu?
That would not be sufficient space. And it's open space towards the view shed of Back Creek and the Marina from the Adaptive Boating Center, Learning Center, which is an 18-foot high glass wall that will be looking out from the Learning Center across the lawn to the water. Secondly, as Carl mentioned, the pavilion will have an opportunity to have entertainment there, and people would be able to sit on the lawn. We were looking for a Jeffersonian type lawn, but because we had to curve the pathways around some of the trees, that encroached on that open area. But it still will be a nice, refreshing area for children to play games on it as well, and other activities that require outdoor open space that's level.
All right, well, that's your choice. I don't know if this is a question for you, Mr. Bollinger or Mr. Husted, but we did receive one well-written and extensive comment from a neighbor. And it focused in, as far as I could tell, on one tree and then the choice of a replacement tree. And he was quite clear that that choice he didn't feel was the right choice. So either one of you, it has to do with a willow oak, which is apparently not in good shape.
What he's referring to is a tulip poplar that's on the corner of the property right now. That is about a third of the tree is remaining after lightning strikes. And we were going to remove the tree, but not take the stump out because it's likely holding the bank together in that location. It's a very sizable 30-foot section remaining of tulip poplar. And he's referring to the willow oak and other trees that are currently planned to be planted in that area. What he apparently is looking to do is to have clear space viewing over the crab property towards the Severn River. We're not doing anything that would block the view shed from his home on that property out through to Back Creek. Now, if we can plant different trees that have branches that start at a higher level or smaller leaves, those are certainly options we'd be happy to consider.
Mr. Husted, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm happy to work with the property owner, like Paul had mentioned, to see what we can do to make sure everybody's happy with this.
Are you familiar with what his observations and complaints and suggestions are?
I am not.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hear from him. You'll get a chance to answer up and think about it for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, this is a collaborative process. So we've been working extensively with Tom Smith, Brian Adams on the planning and the materials there. We've received a lot of input on what we can and should or could plant there. But as I said, we're planting 600 trees, shrubs, bushes, and perennials on the property to mitigate the environmental impacts of the disturbance of property.
I got a question about the landscaping and then also a question about the pavilion and the fencing. So I'll ask the landscaping one first. You got a great piece of property, and I've looked at the design, and I think, and of what I've heard, is you're preserving your view from the main building out to the water and the marina. Because I mean, obviously, that's what you want. But I see tons and tons of plantings. What are the heights of those, and will they restrict your view at all to the water? Because it's a beautiful view to maintain, and I'm worried about keeping that for you as well as maintaining the green.
So most of them in front are smaller shrubs, and there is a small bank that goes down. So that would be even less of a height. We've tried to take the trees and sort of slide them to the side and maybe put some smaller trees in there along each side so that we can kind of keep the view.
If you're at the main building, you'll be able to see straight through to the pier, no problem, right?
Yes.
With very little effect.
Correct.
And
Okay.
this is Cynthia. I'd like to jump in here. There are requirements for critical area regulations that are going to require that a certain percentage of the planting be in trees. Even though they're paying a fee in lieu, they still have to provide some trees. You can't just provide low shrubs and grasses. They will need to provide trees. So it's a little bit tricky and sort of a puzzle to provide what's needed. Even though they're paying a fee in lieu, they still have to provide trees.
And they've all worked hand in hand with you with that already. That's why we're at this point. So I presume that's all been handled. Correct, Cynthia?
No, it's still not fully resolved. There is a couple conditions in the staff report that talk about being consistent with the critical area regulations and program. and having Critical Area Commission approve the plan.
Okay. The square footage of trees, what's the percentage, let's say, of trees? You got 4,000 square foot. You said that you're going to be short and you're going to have to pay a fee in lieu. Well, how many square feet of plantings are you going to have? Like, what's the percentage? What do you don't, well, how much are you short? 30% short? 20% short?
I think we're 25%, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25%.
Okay.
On sheet, let me get the number for you. Sheet 11 of 14, there is the plant schedule mitigation chart and all the calculations that go into it.
Right.
And because of the lot coverage and the ratios, the total amount of mitigation required is 18,540 square feet. And like Paul said, we are doing all but around 5,000 square feet of that. So that would be.
And does the grassy area in front of the pavilion count towards your green mitigation?
It does not.
It does not.
No, there's 27% of the mitigation requirement is fee in lieu, and 73% is in plantings.
It's just weird that we as the city are fee in lieu in ourselves, and we complain about a lot of times that people do fee in lieu to get around it, but we're doing it ourselves. But okay. The parking lot, I assume that's going to be all asphalt?
Correct. There's a portion of it, those parking stalls along Benby Beach Road, that will be pervious pavers and not bituminous asphalt.
On the initial drawing on the second of the big, huge printouts, how can you tell which ones are, there's a little shaded area. Those shaded areas in between parking spots aren't going to be pavers, right? That's just the.
No, that's striping between handicap stalls that's required by law. So there's a 5-foot striping stall and an 8-foot vehicle stall. That 12 feet makes up one handicap space.
Thank you. The eastern parking spaces are the 9 that are pavers, right?
Yes, that is correct. And they are shaded on your plans.
Why not make any more pervious pavers?
Say that again?
Why not make any more parking spaces pervious pavers? What's the reasoning?
Pervious pavers are extremely expensive, and the 2 microbial retention facilities along the bulkhead do a better job at treating runoff off of pavement than actually putting it underground in stone.
Okay. Myself, I'm a big fan of concrete because it lessens the temperature of a parking lot in the summertime, as well as, in my view, it's more environmentally friendly. Other engineers will argue that the production is not as easily done for environmental perspective, but I'd rather do concrete. Was there any thought to concrete parking lot or just straight asphalt because of ease and cheapness?
You know, I mean, we could go into a long dissertation between the differences on maintenance and wearable surfaces between asphalt and concrete. The pavers will be concrete, but the asphalt is it's a very efficient surface. It's easy to maintain. It's easy to it's inexpensive to maintain. So we've really not explored looking at the rest of the parking lot being concrete.
Okay, and it was mentioned earlier that there were asphalt pavers, and you just said concrete.
I'm sorry, they're concrete pavers.
They're concrete pavers. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question is behind the pavilion, and you guys mentioned obviously the pavilion may be used for bands or something in the future. There's only a 4-foot wood fence there, but then yet there's a house back there, and there's another house on the other side. For noise and light mitigation in the evenings, I would think a 4-foot fence is inadequate. I would want more of a buffer from a neighbor, something to calm the noise, because you're looking at a beautiful piece of property that people are going to want to use for renting weddings and other things like that. I mean, how many weddings would you have there? If it was me, I'd have a wedding there every weekend, on every Saturday, Friday, and Saturday night, a reception on that pavilion. So what about noise mitigation and fence height behind the pavilion?
There's a state requirement that a certain distance from the water, you're not allowed to have anything more than a 4-foot fence. And that's really primarily because of view shed concerns. So we have a 6-foot fence coming down the western side of the property until we can't anymore. And then it becomes a 4-foot fence. In terms of noise abatement, and I'll speak for Paul unless he wants to speak for himself. The plan is to stick to the law requirement, the noise requirement that the crab never exceeds 65 decibels at the property line. However, there are ways to. One of the reasons the pavilion was cited the way it is because if there were musical entertainment or some other amplified voice entertainment or program, it would be facing eastward from the pavilion over the lawn area and in toward the parking lot, and not turn toward an adjacent property.
The pavilion won't have a back wall, will it?
It will
No.
not.
No. So that music's going to go at 360 degrees. Well, I'm going to conclude and let it go to my other commissioners, but my concern for the neighbors behind the pavilion would be noise abatement. And what could we do to avoid that? Because that's going to be every night during the warmer months, in my opinion, on Friday and Saturday nights at least. The landscaping, I get it, still in work in progress with the city planning and zoning department. And the mitigation for that, we'll talk more about that later. Any other commissioners have questions?
Will there be any general public access across the property?
Yes, there will be, as it relates to the grant agreement for program open space. The Crab Adaptive Boating Center is strictly for crab operations during the sailing season. It's not open to the public per se, unless you're coming to a crab program, in part because there's only 23 parking spaces. We don't have room for someone to come and have a picnic at the pavilion who may not be disabled or meet the mission requirements of crab. Under the grant agreement, from November to March, we are open to the public on a reservation basis who may come to the park, to the Adaptive Boating Center and see it and walk around the grounds and enjoy it as it is.
What if somebody does not need a parking space and walks down Bemby Beach Road and wants to cross over and, I don't know, sit on the edge of the dock and look at the water?
They can't do that.
So it's closed to the general public.
That's correct. It's closed to the general public during the crab sailing season of April through October. It's open from November to March to the public on a reservation basis to come in and see the property. The reason you cannot have the general public coming onto the docks and the property is because we are working with people with disabilities and all types of disabilities. And we cannot allow people who are untrained to be on the dock at the same time, or simply to be observing people who may have a disability and standing there.
What about area that's not the dock?
There's to come and stand there.
Yeah, just at the shoreline, for example.
Well, that's all going to be planted up. But that said, the general public is not allowed to come to the site without a reservation unless it's November to March.
I mean, the city just spent an enormous amount of effort with this maritime rezoning. And one of the real themes was public access to the water and to provide, and I would suppose in this case, basically passive access to the water, not, launching a paddle board or a kayak, but just to be able to get there and be on the docks. Now, it's hard to swallow a city property which is now closed to the public.
Actually, I would not concur with that statement because there's 31 locations in the city that provide public access to the water. There is only one currently that meets ADA standards, and that's Truxton Park. This will be the second location in the entire city that is ADA accessible to the water. So a 2 to 32 ratio that you're talking there about people with disabilities that constitutes 20% of our population, I think is a reasonably fair opportunity, because they cannot go and get on a boat at any of the other public locations in the city other than at Truxton Park. And at Truxton Park, they don't have the boarding equipment to get someone who is disabled off of the floating dock onto a boat. So I understand what the general principle of water access is, but in this case, the equity and the equality that has been denied people of disabilities in this city for decades is now going to be remediated by the creation of this adaptive boating center. It's going to be the premier center in the entire United States.
But the few people from the public who want to wander down there and, like I said, sit on the end of the dock, is not going to displace anybody, any of your clients. It's not going to make it. It's not going to make it. It's not going to impede their progress. It's not going to dilute it in any way.
Well, the idea that someone would come and sit on the dock while we're conducting boating operations is not feasible, because our boats are going to be using the docks. So we would not be using the docks with people sitting on them. We have not done that in 30 years at Sandy Point State Park, ever. And it would be a safety hazard. We cannot be responsible for someone who would take the time to come down to our dock and sit there and do whatever.
Chairman Sale here. I understand all your arguments, very valid. Looking in the future, we, as a planning commission, we are all very aware of this huge piece of property here, as well as other pieces of property to the west of that getting developed. And those are considered somewhat inland without their own waterfront access. Yes, around all of these properties on the water pretty much have their own waterfront access. But in the future, when these properties get built out, there will be a big desire for waterfront access, whether it is to go walk down a path and drop a little kayak, or just to sit on a bench and appreciate it. And in the city, we've had major issues with the lack of public access over the last few years. And some people have called it a racial issue. Here, it's a handicap versus non-handicap issue. And I get it. There's a lot of problems out there. But if we could, and I'll just propose this to you, is there any way on the property there could be a small little walkway of steps, not to really impede upon the plantings, or if they do impede upon the plantings, we grant a special exception on that, to get the citizens just down a tiny little path to a bench or somewhere along that little piece of beach on either edge of the property. So there would be some future access to residents as the area gets built out in the next 20 years around that property. Is there anything that we could do there? A little piece? Because that's kind of what we've done to other developers with big developments downtown on Spa Creek.
Maybe Mr. Corse could put up a site plan.
Yeah.
And I'll stop the share because I just want to show you the area that could be built out over the next decades.
Mm-hmm.
The property next to Crab is owned by the Bembys, and the city could buy it and provide that access that you're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Bollinger, I have a question regarding this off-season and can you explain a little bit about the, I guess, people making appointments and making reservations, and what is that going to look like? And what is the off-season? How many months is that? And, how open is it to the public at that point? Is it, you're going to let 10 people in a day, or, how does that work exactly? What are you envisioning?
Well, we're limited by the parking, but it's from November to March.
Mhm.
And the reservation idea is just so that we have ample parking available for whoever may show up, because that also is the crab office there. So we have, our own staff parking there. We'll have meetings, and there may be other groups that want to have meetings there, like the Power Squadron and some organizations that have come to us asking if they would be able to use the Learning Center for meetings.
So you're not going to do it like Thomas Point Park does, where you can get a pass, and they have a certain amount of passes they do per year. Or it'll just be an on basis. You'll have to have somebody monitoring that and making the reservations, or at the crab office, is what you're saying. Okay. I just wanted to understand a little bit better. All right, thank you.
Correct.
So I had a question. Do you know, will Alderman Savage be available at our next meeting at the second part of this to weigh in on the mitigation plan? Clearly he's a supporter of this project, but he's also a supporter of the tree canopy requirements for the city. And I think it would be very helpful for us to hear his opinion on what the mitigation plan is, because he's, he comes to many of our other projects and speaks very forcefully about those sorts of things. So I would like to hear what he has to say about a project that he's a supporter of. So I would encourage you to try to get him to come to our next meeting, because I'd like to hear from him on that. And because I think the stormwater management and tree canopy thing is that those are the issues, the biggest issues that I see in this project. Nobody has any issues with, I think it's a fantastic use, and your goals are awesome, and I really applaud what you're doing here. But I think that a lot of any issues that we're liable to come up with are going to be around the landscaping. So I'd really like to hear from him. And are we going to hear from the testimony from the resident today, or are we going to hear that at a separate meeting?
Well, we're going to hear that today. And if you'd like, we'd go ahead and ask them and then come back to here, so we don't make them wait.
Actually, I do have another thing. There is going off what Alex Klein says, there's always a little bit of a skepticism when it comes to fee in lieu. And is that really effective? And does that really mean anything? As opposed to offsite mitigation, that sort of thing. And has that been looked at? So I would actually second him that I'd like to really hear from, to see what exactly we looked at as far as the options for this 4,400 square feet. Was offsite mitigation looked at? Was, what does Mr. Savage have to say as well? So, we still have another public hearing, but I do think what everything you're doing is great. And I understand what you're saying about you don't want to impede, and you have to have trained people on the docks. So I do understand all of that and the needs for keeping just the public off while you're in season. But, I do want to understand a little bit more about this off-season stuff as well as we go forward. Thank you.
My issue isn't even with the docks. I don't want too many people going around my very expensive boats and systems that I have that are special, for sure. So I get that point. Mine is just that we can't find a 10-foot space somewhere with a tiny little walkway to the road for people to get access on one corner of the property. It doesn't even have to be a preferential piece of the property, just something they could get access to go sit, in the future, or launch drop a kayak on the sand if they could. I know that's asking a lot at this point, but it's one of our major requirements going forward for a lot of things for us in our minds with the comprehensive plan. So if there's anything you guys could think of to where maybe you could fit something, it'd be great by the next meeting if you could think of something on the north side.
Mr. Sale, this is Cynthia again. Please keep in mind that adding any more impervious will also increase the required mitigation that they have to do.
You could always do a path with wood chips,
Sure.
you know? I mean, they last for years, they're cheap. Every tree company in the region is always looking to offload wood chips. And you could do a wood chip thing that winds behind that storage building. And there's no beach there, Mr. Sale. There's just riprap at the edge. But like you said, there's a maple tree at the corner. There could be a bench there, and that could be, you know, just a really passive recreational view. Wouldn't in any way engage with the people on the piers, and it would be consistent with this drive to get more general public access, not providing parking, you know, none of that. And we, you know, we'll have to see how this area develops in the future, but providing that kind of an amenity is simple, you know, and cheap. And I'm not familiar enough with the details of the planting plan to, you know, to get into it, but.
And will there be any bike racks for that November to March harsh winter timeframe for anybody who wants to bike out there and see the place?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Cynthia again. That's a condition as well, that they have to provide at least 2 bicycle parking spaces.
And don't get frustrated, because we try to find our little holes that we always are gunning for on these things. It's fantastic purpose you have here. Lots of hard work. We get that.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is when you talk about wood chip paths, anytime we're providing access on the property, it has to be ADA. So there's no such thing as putting wood chips down, because what you've just done is discriminated against someone who's disabled from going down that path. And we can't do that.
Interesting.
You're discriminating against people who really have no access to the water also. So we really need to try to find something here.
It's discrimination, but it's not unjust discrimination. There's a difference.
That's true.
Wow. Okay.
Now, getting back to the one point about the bicycling and people, you know, riding down on a bicycle, would they also need to make a reservation if they're coming down on a bicycle?
It's not public access to the property during the sailing season.
I'm talking about the off season. If they rode down on a bicycle and parking wasn't an issue, would they still need to make a reservation? If somebody walked down,
we need to know who's on the property, because we are liable. The city has required CRAB to be liable for anyone on the property. So we have to carry insurance for that. So we have to know about it. I don't think we would want anyone just walking around on the property. As the chairman stated, we've got a lot of valuable assets there, and just having people around it's.
You know, I want to bring your attention to something called the Maryland Recreational Use Statute, which, if you're providing a recreational or educational use for free, your standard of care, your liability gets reduced from a high negligence standard to the standard you owe to a trespasser, which is very low. So that should not be an issue. Because you're providing something for free, you're not charging for it. You could even charge for parking, which is separated out from the use statute. But do you follow me? It's a very important difference, which most property owners are not aware of. So
thank you for that information, because Lord knows what we're paying in liability insurance is the same as we're in the yacht club category.
I'm sure you are, because I'm sure you are, and you have many more delicate operations that you need to perform to get people on and off boats. We're all sensitive to that, but there's a tremendous need in this city for getting some kinds of access to the water, and I'd like everybody to sort of put their minds to something which could be environmentally sensitive and not in any way take away from the mitigation requirements, but could be included. And let's leave that topic for now. Let everybody think about it for 2 weeks.
I have another engineering sort of question. And it revolves around sediment control during regrading, because there will be, as I read, some regrading of the land closer to the water. And, as we've all read about recently, that's going to be a pretty sensitive topic, that during regrading, that, if they're in the middle of pushing a bunch of dirt around and we get a really bad storm, as we often get, I'd like to make sure that there are some very stringent controls in place, that half of that ground up berm doesn't end up in Back Creek. So I mean, I know you guys will have sort of the standard sediment control practices put in place, but I think it's important to make sure that whatever gets put in place is way above and beyond just a standard practice, because it has such potential for making a big mess, in a place that's owned by the city. And so I think it behooves us to make sure that this is written in the conditions that we're really trying to do the right thing here. And so I don't know if you want to address what the plan is, beyond just the things we've read. And, it was a little hard for me to sort of suss out, what's in the plans and how that may or may not go beyond sort of standard sediment control practices. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The sediment control plan will be reviewed and done during the grading permit application, which is after this process. But we have shown in this set of plans erosion and sediment control that incorporates primarily reinforced silt fences. It's a small piece of property. The slopes are relatively low, and what would qualify under the Maryland state laws for sediment control in this case would be the use of a silt fence. We have chosen to incorporate reinforced silt fence just because, as most of you know, silt fence can get easily overwhelmed and also doesn't hold up to the abuse of a construction site very well. So the reinforced silt fence primarily along the landward side of the bulkhead is a sort of like a chicken wire reinforced silt fence, and that's currently shown now. If the Planning Commission is going to require additional sediment controls beyond what is required by the state law, it would just be important for those things to be specific and not just use terms like above and beyond, because the current sediment control that is implemented across the state is based on specific design storms. If we were to be asked to do something more than that, it would be necessary to know what level of design we were aiming for. So
yes, so I would ask staff to think about that and perhaps propose something. And again, this is a subject that I would love to hear Alderman Savage's opinion on, since he clearly is in the middle of the sediment control business around the city. So I think it's important to, and I'm not an expert in this area clearly, so it's not something I could come up with, but I think it would be really important to have staff be able to enumerate what's above and beyond, given that it is property that the city owns and is leasing to Crab. So I think, Cynthia, if you could take that action to have the expertise and staff look into that, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fine. That would have to be something that would be a discussion with our stormwater management engineers and not planning and zoning staff directly. But we can work on that.
Anyone else before we hear from the public? We can always come back to him as well. And is Steve still online? The guy who's talking to us initially, the second guy talking to us earlier?
I don't believe so. He timed out.
Okay. I was going to ask him a question. I should have asked it earlier. Maybe next time. Okay, so members, do we have the member of the public that wants to talk? Do we have them?
We do, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, I would like to, if the commissioners don't have an issue, I'd like to open up the public comment portion of the item. Evidently, no problems from the commissioners. Excellent. We'll do that. So we'll open up the public comment section, and we have one person that would like to talk who is a adjoining property owner. If that person's online, could they please state their name and their address, and are they the western property or the property just to the south of it? And go ahead and talk. We'll give you a good 5 minutes or so and state your case, please. And we'll also ask you questions after you're finished talking if we have any from the commissioners.
Okay,
So,
great. Can you hear me?
yes, Peter, sorry. How do you pronounce that?
Peter, sorry. And Ann Mathias is here. She's the co-owner of the property. It's 7046 Bemby Beach Road. It's just to the west side of the property you're discussing. And as I mentioned, we sent a kind of a long message to you or a long comment, but you know, we bought the property in July. You know, we're very supportive of crab. Both of us taught sailing at Annapolis Sailing School just down the road, so we're really, you know, happy that there's going to be more sailing available to, you know, all members of the public. Yeah, that's the house there, and the garage is in between. That's the garage, correct? So our comments were primarily focused on two things. One was, so there's a large poplar, a tulip poplar that was discussed earlier that's going to be taken down. It's yeah, in the northwest corner there. It's obviously it's a very old tree that's seen a lot of damage over the years. We recently removed a large hickory that was right next to it on our property. That was, again, you know, struck by lightning and in very bad shape, and half of it was dead and the other half was rotted out. So our primary concern is putting two really large canopy trees right in that corner. Obviously the view shed, our view shed, looking across the crab property, in addition to the branches, you know, in a few years extending across our property and kind of blocking off, you know, a view straight down our property, is that's a concern. We think that it's possible that the trees could be put elsewhere on the property, but we understand that there's extensive plantings required. 600 plants, I think, was mentioned. But we just think that putting canopy trees right there, and not just the view shed, but also the two trees that were there, you know, they've suffered damage over the years, and I think any large trees that go in that area are also going to similarly, you know, not do very well, particularly with the, you know, with the saltwater or brackish water intrusion in that area and the rising tides and everything that we're seeing over the decades. You know, it's just, we just don't think that's a particularly good location for large trees that are, you know, they're very dense foliage and very, you know, tall and very wide. So, you know, there are other areas on the property that we think could accommodate that. We also indicated a willingness to, you know, help pay a fee in lieu if they were going to be not planted there or planted on some other city property, which we understand is an option. And then to sum up, the other issue we had, which you covered somewhat, was the pavilion. We're a little bit concerned about noise because it's really right next to our property. It's, I think, 4 or 5 feet away from the property line. And, you know, we're concerned that is going to be a source of, you know, we don't really know what the plans are for it, but that it's going to be a source of noise for us. And we're planning to live there, you know, forever. We love the property, and we're really excited to buy it. So, you know, we hope the city of Annapolis and Crab will be great neighbors, and we fully expect them to. So those are our concerns. And Ann, who's sitting here with me, maybe wants to add something.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I would just reiterate that we're utterly supportive of Crab's mission to bring accessible boating to all. We are concerned that what may end up occurring is the creation of a sort of an event and entertainment facility right next to us. A pavilion, a big open lawn, a big, beautiful glass fronted building. I love the mission of CRAB. I love, bringing boating to more people. But, children can play in an area where trees are growing. I don't even understand how much live music and how many events are going to be occurring, if it's going to be something every weekend, if it's going to be the site of all of CRAB's fundraising activities and events. It is right there, like a residential neighborhood. You've got us living in our home. You've got the two of the Williams brothers living, right in the house next door. You've got, Anne and her husband on the corner there. So I am concerned about that. And I do think, I totally respect the landscape architect's views, but, we've had just now, the only trees that were in that area were damaged by lightning, were rotted out from saltwater incursion and substandard growing environment. And to put a tree that's going to grow to be 60 to 80, two willow oaks that are going to grow to be 60 to 80 feet wide each, right at that corner, will impact our view shed directly straight out from our property. And it will actually also impact water quality because it's going to create a ton of shade over the water, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I just think it's not the right place for big canopy trees. And you could set them back much further. The sort of healthy trees are much further back in the property. We have two very large maples that are vigorously growing, putting their roots all over the place, which are much farther back. We have an oak, a red oak pin oak that's right in front of our house. You can't even really see it on this image for some reason. I don't know why, but it's just on the west side of our house. It's a 50-foot tall tree up on the bank. And they're doing very well there, but the trees down by the water are not and have not. So I'll just stop there. We've gone through our 5 minutes.
I have two questions. One of them is, do you have any suggestions as to what trees would thrive there and would work with you for you? And the second question is there any room on your property where a large tree would be well placed, and which would then, help with their mitigation requirements?
Well, sure. I'll speak to that quickly. I'm not really an arborist, obviously, and I don't know. There are certain trees that will grow in that saltwater environment, but I don't know if they're native to Maryland, and I don't know also much about that. But we would look. Obviously, if there was something less dense and maybe that grew, up higher, maybe that would be better for the view shed. Obviously we have a lot of land that's an 1.1 property because it's the entire, there's the waterfront, our house, and that entire lot is also ours as well. So, and we'd be willing to look at that as, as if it makes more sense. We have plenty of land. We love trees. But there's a good place for them and not great place. And I will also add that CRAB will have a view of Back Creek and the Marina, but they're going to lose, I think, about 50% of their waterfront view. The Maryland State Capitol building. They're going to lose a lot because they're going to be right in front of their building. Those two trees, the Willow Oaks. So
yeah. So
I think that was the second question was the question I was going to ask, but I wanted to just expand on that a little further. Is would you be willing to set aside an easement on your property for such mitigation? Because that's the way that would have to go, is that there would have to be some sort of conservation easement that essentially puts that land that whatever tree or trees gets planted on, makes it untouchable, so that you can't, 10 or 20 years later, if you decide to sell the property, the next person can't say, well, I want to cut these trees down to do something else. It would have to be put in an easement. Would you entertain something like that? So,
Well, yeah, just so you know, I mean, I'm a land use attorney myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't think we would have a big issue with that, depending where it was. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, your lot, as you said, your lot is quite large, and it does front Bemby Beach. You have a lot of front on Bemby Beach Road, which is certainly an appropriate place for trees like that.
yes. So to answer your question, we would certainly entertain something like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
we
would
have
be
no
great.
other property other than just to live there and enjoy it. So, you know, that's
Where does your property end and on the south side of your house? Like how far down?
if you see there's another house, that's Wayne Williams who lives there. So our property line runs about 15 feet from his house, all the way
Yeah,
from
so right where you have the
Clackering
cursor.
Road, all the way down to Bemby Beach Road.
Yeah, yeah, right where your cursor is, those trees are on our property?
No, those are on
That's the edge
that's
of the
about
property.
the edge of the property
Where
right
your
there.
cursor is. And if you run just straight across to Bemby Beach Road, yeah, keep going straight across. Yep, that's basically our property line there. So it's a big L. So that whole area is ours.
Yes.
Really? And this is your
Yeah.
driveway?
Yes.
Yes.
So you brought up some good points about a venue right next door to you. And, you know, I think that needs to be addressed because I could not imagine weddings happening next door to my house. I know how loud they can get. I know how long they can go in the evening. I know what they can be. Has that been addressed with the city, and what are the rules? Do we need special exceptions for that? I don't quite understand how they could be putting a venue, an entertainment venue right next to in a residential neighborhood, and how that can be okay. So that's not a question for you guys as neighbors, but I'd like to hear that from
Well,
the
David,
city.
technically it's not a residential neighborhood. It's a WMI.
WMI.
That use is conforming grandfathered. So,
Oh, okay.
you know, it's not technically
There-
residential.
I don't know if it made it into the zoning legislation, but there was discussion about events and about limiting at least the hours of events and the
Till 10 o'clock, yeah.
amplification of sound. So there was some discussion about events, specifically in WMI and WME. But I don't know that it made it into the legislation. We could certainly find out. It's also the sort of thing which can go into conditions. What was discussed was, you know, a cutoff time of 10 p.m. for any kind of, I don't know, amplified music is what I think it was, or amplified sound. I think that Miss Godinez could check into that to see whether it made it into the zoning legislation, and if not, you know, what might be appropriate in a situation like this.
Yeah, I know that was our recommendation.
Excuse me, Bob, I think were a number of specific conditions related to what you're saying, and Eric Lashinsky is actually right now working with Jacqueline Lee on the finalization of the maritime legislation to incorporate all the numerous amendments that the council made. So that should be done in the next few days. So we, you know, but there are limits on live entertainment and amplified music, et cetera, in the legislation. And the new legislation is in effect already. So they would have to comply with that legislation.
Perhaps you could report to us next meeting.
We will be happy to do so.
Thank you.
And don't let the sirens go yet. I have a question for him. Are you still there, Peter? And
Oh, sorry, we're
Yeah,
still
we're
still here, and it's Peter, sorry, and Ann Mathias.
on the design, the fence behind the pavilion is a 4-foot fence, and it starts roughly, the 4-foot starts roughly about where the house is, and that would go to the beach. So 4 foot, and they're limited because it's inside of the 100-foot buffer zone at 4 feet for a fence. In my opinion, that doesn't really give you much sound protection or even view protection from the property. Do you even care about that fence being only 4 feet? Do you like it lower, or would you want higher? What's your preference if there was a preference?
Well, I think our preference would be higher. Our property is a little bit above that property. I frankly don't think it's an issue of what's going on the property to not see it. We have a marina on one side of us, and this facility will be on the other. And we are both avid boaters, so we like boating activity. But I think a higher fence, it would be nice if possible. It sounds like it's not allowed in that area. So we're fine with a lower if that's necessary. I think there will also be lots of plantings along there. So there will be some screening, but I think there should be a fence.
Can I hear from the developer what kind of plantings would be behind the pavilion there, or anything to buffer noise or view from the pavilion to their house?
So we're proposing like understory trees and large shrubs in that area that run all the way down to the waterfront.
Right behind the pavilion, up to the main building, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so, and when you say, what kind of growth height are we talking there?
So the trees might get 20 to 25 feet tall, and the shrubs probably are 4 to 5 feet tall.
Okay, and the pavilion has no backing to it. It's just open all the way around?
That's correct.
And how big is the pavilion dimensions roughly?
25 by 15.
Say that again?
25 feet by 15.
It's really not that big.
No, it's
No.
meant for our guests in wheelchairs to be able to come into a shaded environment with fans, stay cool, and have lunch in during the sailing season.
Yeah, 25 by 15. It's like a big dining room. Okay. Just to give everybody, the Saris and everybody else, an idea of what's going there. How about lighting on the property and keeping bright LED lights for protection of assets at night from blinding neighbors, and keeping it kind of dim to the neighboring properties? How's the lighting on this development?
We paid for a lighting consultant to come in and provide accent lighting and security lighting, but it will be our intention not to be mounting any lighting that is elevated and shining down that would then cast light into our neighbor's property. That's not our intention whatsoever. And we're trying to accent the building itself and what it looks like, and it'll be completely blocked by the garage of the Saris, and it'll also be planted up on the other side with Weatherby's house. So with a fence over there, that'll be a 6-foot fence along that side.
And to bridge the gap of communications, I believe the Saris hadn't had a chance to work with your talkie because they just recently purchased the property, very recently. Is there an open avenue of communication? Maybe after this meeting, you can exchange info? Or
I've been speaking with Peter.
Oh, you have?
Off and on, and I just talked to him 10 days ago about this very issue.
All right. Well, I guess earlier in our meeting, we were talking about one of the property neighbors not being able to communicate. So is that wrong? You've been able to talk with the Weathersbys, Rakowski, and the Saris, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Anybody who they all have our contact information at Crab. They have my telephone number, and they've never had any issues with getting a hold of me on any issue. The thing is I can't answer some of the questions because we have to get building permits to be able to answer some of those questions.
Okay. Anything else from the Saris before we start proceeding into other questions by commissioners?
I just wanted to make one clarification on the waterfront marine industrial zone issue.
Who is speaking?
So sorry, this is Ann Matthias, one of the co-owners with Peter of the property right next door. And so, yes, generally the area is a WMI area, but our house and our property is residentially zoned. So we have to comply with all the residential zoning rules, in terms of doing anything with our property. And so for us, it's a residential property. Yes, we have a marina on one side, and now, we have a marina on the other side. But the property itself is utterly a residentially zoned property at this point. I mean, it just happened that the overlay occurred after it was, been a residential property for 100 years. So
What are you technically zoned right now? Are you still R something or are you WMI as well?
no, it's R, like it's R something when you look it up.
Okay.
That's not correct. I'm looking at the map now and it shows WMI.
So
So
maybe our map could be wrong. That's happened
Right,
before.
the whole area is the WMI overlay, but since we existed as a residential facility, but residential house before the creation of the WMI, it's grandfathered in as residential.
that's what
So,
I
like,
said.
we-
It's conforming, it's grandfathered conforming.
Right, that's correct. But it's
That's
almost
what I
like
said.
great grandfather, like it's been residential forever.
Yeah, no, that's what I
yeah.
said. I don't think that was
Yeah.
in dispute.
No, I wasn't
Okay.
contradicting you. I just wanted to underline that, it's not, I mean,
Your
it has a very residential feel. It's a residential house. It's been there, since 1950. And, we view it as our residence. It's our home. So,
But it's zoned WMI. So it would be very interesting to see if this line of communication between y'all might lead to the siting and of trees on Sari and Matthias property. And then ease the mitigation requirements for crab. That was a lot of words to say. Maybe you guys can come to a deal on planting some trees and putting in the right conservation easement for those trees.
can
We'd
I
be
ask
happy
a
to do
question then?
that because the issue is with the Critical Area Commission and Planning and Zoning agreeing to that
Right,
arrangement.
right. My hunch is that they will, but you never know.
Yeah, but do you have the right to plant a big tree on your property in your own mitigation that's going to future block the view of somebody else over and grow onto their property? That's the question I have for planning and zoning and the landscape architects online. You know what I mean? Is
No.
that allowable if you know you're going to plant some massively expanding tree right near the corner? Is that okay? Anyone legal landscape architect? Vernon.
So from the critical area standpoint, they're really focused on putting trees on the property. In my mind, this is, yes, when you plant this in the ground, it's going to be 12 feet tall, 15 feet tall, and you'll have branches on it. But as it matures, you will just have the trunk there blocking the view. So the thing I like about oaks is that they grow really tall. And eventually, in my mind, will only have 2 feet of the trunk that might block your view. I certainly would look to preserve the view shed for everyone around there. And I'll certainly take another look at the selection of plants that we chose there to make sure that they're worthy of being near the seashore there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you get credit for the mature canopy of a tree that you plant, even if it goes onto somebody else's property line, over their property line. You get credit for that?
Yes.
So if you planted a bunch of massive trees right on your property line, you could get credit for that canopy that's expanding over onto other people's property lines. And those people also get credit for that canopy, or no, because the trunk's not on their property?
Mr. Sale, with critical area regulations, you don't get credit for the canopy. There's a certain amount of credit that you get for planting certain types of plants. And they're based on when you plant a tree, if it's got a 2-inch trunk, when you plant it, you get 200 square feet of credit. When you design where that plant is going, it should be designed so that it's a mature tree on your property site. Now, trees will do whatever they want to do, but generally speaking, you should be designing so that it's got enough space for maturity to grow correctly in that spot. As far as the willow oaks that have been proposed, that species tends to be one of the better species for salt tolerance. Obviously continued inundation and wet roots, it may not be able to handle that if that's going to be the situation there. But as far as salt tolerance, that's actually a pretty good species from my understanding.
I would just think that's not so great if I'm a neighboring property that somebody could plant a massive tree right on the edge of the property that would grow eventually to be hanging over a lot of my property. I mean, I get it. We need trees, but just a thought. All right, anyone else? Comments? And I believe Ann, or was it Matthias, or sorry, did you have one last comment to make?
Yeah. Oh, so just one last thing. We were just chatting amongst ourselves here. I know that the trees that I guess the place where we have room to plant big trees, like we were talking about along Bemby Beach Road itself, or, you know, in that big area there, that is not inside the 100-foot zone. So I don't know, maybe this is a question for Cynthia Godinez about whether or not that even works. If we plant the trees there, if they create a credit for the crab.
It is a possibility. The first, there's a number of options. The first option is always on the property within the 100-foot buffer. Then the second option is on the property somewhere. Then the third option is off-site planting. And then the fourth option is fee in lieu. However, as noted earlier, any of this plan with the landscaping has to be approved by the Critical Area Commission. So it would have to be something that they would be okay with.
Right. I think it's worth exploring.
And the property owner, you can come back at the next meeting and testify and ask questions again. So this isn't it. There's the next meeting as well.
Really worth exploring.
Thank
you. All right, good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much from the property owners. And moving back to the commissioners and asking questions of the developer or anybody else right now until the next meeting. Okay, well, hearing no more on this item, it's the initial briefing on this item. I want to thank the applicant and the city and everyone. Tons of work going on with this, and the residents for participation. This is what it's all about. This is why our meetings are here. So we all can come to conclusion and get it out in the open and ask questions. We will now keep the public hearing open until our next meeting in November, at which point anyone can come back from the public and talk again online. They can send in a request to do that again and make comment again if they'd like, even if they've already done so. And commissioners will have a chance to ask even further questions of the developer and debate the finality of this design. In conclusion, for things, big ticket items I saw, which are of concern, is having the applicant and the developer look into any possibility for public access of however small it could be on the edges of the property in some way to maybe not interfere during the summer months, which is outside of that November to March timeframe. So the public can have some kind of access in the future, because we're assuming that there will be a lot more development in that area in the future. And we'd like to already have public access granted in if possible. So that's something to look into. We're not saying it's a requirement. It's an idea we had here today. Also, I believe there was another issue brought up for the tree, of course, in the corner of the property, and maybe talking with the residents that we just had online about possible mitigation and planting elsewhere on their property with an easement associated with. Mr. Pline brought that up. Thank you, Commissioner Pline. Are there any other items for the applicant developer to look into? Let's see.
Well, there's one for the city to get back to us with the entertainment venue and the legislation for WMI, so that we understand that better.
Okay. Any others from the commissioner?
Yeah, further that the city stormwater engineers come up, give us some information about what's sediment control mitigation might be appropriate here to make sure we go above and beyond.
And also verbiage for the sidewalk and fee, or the sidewalk fee clarification from Cynthia. Those are the items I had, or action items. Anything else? Can the applicant remember anything else for us to do for action, or the city commissioners, anyone?
I want to thank, at this point, I want to thank the applicant for really a very concise and presentation, and the kind of work that's behind this and the speed at which they've gotten this done is really exemplary. So let's continue. Let's see if we can continue and this spirit of collaboration and get this done.
Thank you.
Thumbs up to all. Okay, well, we will then continue the public hearing for this item till the next meeting, and that ends this item for talk today. And we'll move down on the agenda to any miscellaneous items and then on to adjournment after that. So as far as miscellaneous concerned, meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission, there's been talk of a joint meeting happening post-Thanksgiving week on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday nights for the planning commissioners. Bob Walden's already said he's available any of those nights. Me personally, right after a big long Thanksgiving break, I would not recommend the Monday night. I would recommend at least the Tuesday or maybe the Wednesday night. Give everybody a day to get back into the swing of things.
Monday is the one I'm on the fence if I can do it, but I can probably get away with it. I'd have to move some things around, but
Tuesday
I could do it if I need to.
Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm available.
Yeah.
So Tuesday and Wednesday are your preferred days. Why don't we just tell them Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yeah, and as I look at that more for myself, Monday is out for me, and I would prefer Tuesday.
Yeah, everybody's coming back to a million emails on Monday and yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get back to and say that you all are, and there would be you would be getting something in advance of the meeting to look at, and I'm not sure exactly when, but they're planning on putting together something so that you have something preliminary. They're presenting their concept plan for the area, this next phase, which does not actually include all of the city dock. It's not all of the city dock action plan, concept plan. It's a portion of it, but so anyway.
It sounds like Tuesday's our first choice. Tuesday's our first choice, it sounds like, with Wednesday being the alternate. Is that correct?
Okay? Rock and roll, guys. Okay, sounds good.
Jackie, would you ask them if they would prefer in person or virtual?
Yeah, I think that I will absolutely figure that out in terms of what everybody's will is on that. That question didn't come up in the team meeting today, but yes, I will absolutely do that.
And what is if I could just canvass my fellows here, what do you guys think?
I'm boosted.
In person or virtual?
I'm fine.
Huh?
I'm boosted. I'm fine.
You said what?
I'm boosted. I'm fine.
So are you talking about for the combined HPC meeting?
Yes.
I was thinking virtual would be the best way to handle that myself, but whatever you think, maybe.
In general, if it's mostly presentations and not a lot of back and forth, for virtual is just as easy.
That's a lot of people to go to in person. I mean, you're talking 2 commissions, everybody briefing. I think that would be virtual, if anything.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But I mean, I'll do it if you guys want to do it the other way. Sure. You got to wear a mask with everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you all were going to have an internal discussion about Providence Point and whether you, how you wanted to handle work session, if meetings for that. Remember, Ben, this came up at the last meeting.
Right, the same.
Is Tom still with us? Yes.
Is this, do you want to do in person and wear a mask for all those hours for both meetings, or you just want to do one in-person meeting and the other is virtual? And I think we kind of talked about before we closed out that having all the presentations and the front end stuff done virtually, and then you go into an actual meeting in person for the crowd to make comment.
And then I think there was also the possibility of doing a Saturday meeting with Providence Point. Tom, isn't that correct? Thomas?
It was just thrown out as an idea of something we had done in the past, only on one occasion for Park Place, which was a large scale project because it was a multiple evening review and presentation discussion.
See, if we did a Saturday, we could keep you all day locked in.
Well, No, I'm a fan of during the week and we just have multiple meetings, you know?
Well, but the advantage of the Saturday meeting is that people can come to it. Whereas, you know, the evenings are, I mean, they're tough on people, you know, with kids and so forth, to get out of the house. I think it depends on the number of people who sign up. I'm sorry, Ben. The look on your face is so obvious.
I think anything in December, if you're talking December, forget about a weekend for me.
Oh, well, Tom, is this going to go through December and into January, or are you thinking it can all you're looking to get it all done by the end of December?
Well, I'm not sure if that's feasible, Bob. We're going to start on December the 16th with the first evening. I'm assuming we're going to go into January by taking multiple evenings or a Saturday.
Okay. So it may be that, you know, okay, I'm going to leave it in personally, from my point of view, I think that presenting it virtually, the presentations virtual is fine. It really makes sense. They present well. But when we start to get into testimony, I think that having an in-person meeting just helps. It makes it more effective. But at any rate, I think that a Saturday meeting might be required. If you get, we get 45 or 50 people who want to sign up and talk.
We're going to find a venue.
Well, one of the problems about pushing a Saturday meeting into January is that as of January 1st, the parking garage will be closed.
Oh,
that was the other part of the problem. So at least
Yeah.
it's going to be virtual. First meeting virtual.
There are a whole lot of puzzle pieces, so.
Well, I don't see that we could have an in-person meeting that's in the city council chambers. It's going to be big enough for spacing and everything else. I just couldn't imagine that. I would think we'd have to go to a different venue anyways.
Well,
What would be ideal is if we could have a Saturday meeting at Pitt Moyer, but I don't think that those meetings could be recorded over there. So that's, to be available to the public, which is another component of it.
Okay.
Everything is virtual, doesn't it? And if we plan the first meeting virtual December, that takes care of that. And the second meeting, which is obviously going to be in January, we could shoot for have a backup of virtual planned already but then go for an open hearing if you find someplace. So I would schedule virtual, at least 3 meetings virtually, and then the second and third one could be if we find a place that can accept us parking wise and space wise, then be gone to in person. How about that?
Okay.
Let's start with that. So we got virtual, all 3 scheduled virtual. So we at least have 3 meetings slated for it. And then the second and third meetings, if we find some place to have in person, we do so. But I mean, because you don't know how many people you're going to have. And
correct.
Okay, so also on December 2nd, I believe, isn't that, Tom, that Chesapeake Grove is going on December 2nd? Is that correct? We have 2 other projects that have to come to you in that December, January timeframe.
I'm not sure about Chesapeake Grove. Cynthia can chime in, but we may have the Bay Village project.
Yeah, Chesapeake Grove isn't going to be ready by December 2nd. They just turned in their revisions recently.
Okay, so if they can't go on December 2nd, they're going to have to wait till February. Because we're committing the January meetings to Providence Point. That's what we're doing right now. Okay, just want everybody to understand. So that's what you're going to need to tell applicants.
December
2nd.
Tom, which was I thought you mentioned when we were having our current planning meeting yesterday, that you talked about possibly a project making December 2nd.
Yeah, that would be the Bay Village,
Bay Village.
Site design. Yes.
Yeah, we should really try to get Bay Village over with it December 2nd, so we can just do the wrap up on the 16th before we start Providence Point, or we're going to be pushing that to February also.
Right. I'm meeting with the
We
developers
need to
on
clear the decks
Monday.
in January for Providence Point, is what I'm saying.
I'm meeting with the Bay Village developers on Monday, and I'll have a
Okay.
better understanding whether it'll be ready for December 2nd or not.
Right. Okay, that's fine. I just, that's, we really do need to, when we find, Providence Point has been in the making now for 20 years, so we really need to set aside.
So there's no rush.
Set aside some time for it, correct? I mean, it's a humongous project, and Tom and I were here, we both did both Acton's Landing and Park Place, and we know how complicated it can get to get a project of that magnitude through the hearing process.
So you just want to get it done before you retire?
Well, maybe,
Good joke.
and I don't know that that's a consideration, Alex, so, okay. Thank you for making a decision about the joint meeting on, because that project will be also coming back in, and, we just need to be able to start to tell applicants who bring stuff in that, we're gonna have a lapse in when we can schedule stuff till, okay?
So let's schedule 3 meetings. Virtual.
Yes, we got that. We've all written that down, Ben.
Got it. We'll audible the 2nd, 3rd. And if we really have to, we'll add on another meeting if we can find time virtually as well. So we'll make the space to make the time. So
Right. But what I'm hearing from you all on Saturday, like David does not want to do a Saturday in December, and I don't think Ben wants to do a Saturday in December, but we can look at some Saturdays in January options, if
do we have any other weeknights we could also give to it? Can you give us another weeknight to it,
right.
Do 3 in a row. Well, painful.
Okay.
Up in the air for the holidays. It's just really up in the air for the holidays.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah, David has a really busy holiday life.
No, it's about not being in town.
Right, I know. I'm just joking now. Okay.
All right, enough of that. Anything else?
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Wonderful. Well, we'll see you at the next meeting, and we will continue this item. And on the back burner, there was the child care facility, which do we know when that's coming back roughly?
It's supposed to come back to you on the 18th.
Do they come back with any revisions?
That's the intent, right? Is to come back on the 18th. We've had some discussions with Public Works and the traffic engineers trying to look at some alternative ideas, whether it's parking off-site with pedestrian crossings or different lane assignments and left turn movements. A lot is on the table at the moment, and a lot of it depends upon Public Works and what they feel is safe and adequate or not.
Okay, are we saying they have to then be back by the 18th? Because that only gives them 2 weeks, and they may not be finished. So we're open to.
That's what we discussed at the last meeting.
Well, whatever works for them is my thing. I don't want to have a half-baked thing come back to us. I would rather have something good come back to us. What do you got?
It's their intent to have something by then. And I think you made that announcement that it would be back on the 18th. So if it's not, I guess on the 18th, you can make another announcement that it'd be continued.
Right. We have to keep it on the schedule for the 18th because we've said it's continued to the 18th. So what would happen if they're not ready is it would be on the agenda, and then you would just say that you're postponing it to the December. And I would think December 4th would be their next, December 2nd would be their next opportunity.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right. Okay.
That's all I have. Last minute from the commissioners, last chance. Okay, I move for adjournment.
I'll second.
Any discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This meeting for the Planning Commission on November 4th, 2021 is now closed.